The cigar cutter came down fast. One clean motion, the sound it made, metal through bone, echoed across the casino floor like a gunshot. Giuseppe Masseria's nephew screamed. His severed finger rolled across the green felt card table, leaving a trail of blood behind it. 8 casino workers stood frozen, watching Lucky Luciano calmly wrap the finger in a napkin, fold it carefully, and slide it into the nephew's jacket pocket. "Give this to your uncle," Lucky said quietly. "Tell him it's a gift from me." Then he walked out. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The nephew was on his knees, clutching his hand, blood pooling on the floor beneath him. Outside, the Manhattan night was cold. Inside, something irreversible had just happened. To understand why Lucky Luciano cut off Giuseppe Masseria's nephew's finger in front of 8 witnesses, you need to understand where Lucky was in 1930. He was 33 years old, working under Joe the Boss Masseria, the most powerful Italian mobster in New York. Masseria controlled bootlegging, gambling, protection rackets across the Lower East Side and beyond. He was old-school Sicilian. One boss rules everything. Everyone else obeys. But Lucky was different. He'd been meeting with Meyer Lansky, planning something revolutionary. 5 families, equal votes, democracy for gangsters. Masseria knew about these meetings. He didn't like them, but he tolerated them because Lucky made him money. A lot of money. And as long as Lucky showed respect, Masseria would let him operate. But respect had rules. And Joe Masseria's nephew, a 24-year-old named Paulie, who'd grown up in Sicily and moved to New York 3 years earlier, didn't understand those rules. Paulie thought his uncle's power protected him from consequences. Paulie was wrong. October 18th, 1930, 11:47 p.m. Lucky's Casino on Mulberry Street. Small operation, 6 card tables, a roulette wheel, a bar in the back. The kind of place where serious gamblers came to lose serious money. Lucky was at his usual table in the corner. He didn't gamble. He watched the dealers, watched the players, watched the money move. That's when Paulie walked in. Drunk. Very drunk. He'd been drinking since 6 that evening, celebrating some deal he'd closed for his uncle. Whiskey, wine, more whiskey. By the time he stumbled into Lucky's casino, he could barely stand straight. Paulie saw Lucky in the corner, walked over, pulled out a chair, sat down without asking. Lucky looked up, said nothing. "Luciano," Paulie said. His words slurred. "You know who I am? I know who you are," Lucky replied calmly. "Good. Then you know my uncle owns this city, owns you." Lucky didn't respond. Just looked at Paulie, studied him. Paulie leaned forward, nearly falling out of his chair. "You think you're so smart with your meetings, your plans, your commission idea. My uncle told me about it. He thinks it's stupid. And you know what? I think it's stupid too." Many details of this era were never officially recorded. If stories like this interest you, feel free to subscribe and stay with us. The 8 casino workers were listening now. Dealers, bartenders, floor managers. Everyone knew Paulie was Masseria's nephew. Everyone knew Lucky worked for Masseria. And everyone was wondering what Lucky would do when the boss's family disrespected him in his own casino. Lucky still said nothing. Paulie mistook silence for weakness. "You're nothing without my uncle," Paulie said, louder now, emboldened by whiskey and bloodline. "Without him, you're just another street punk from the Lower East Side." He reached out and slapped Lucky's shoulder. Not hard, not a real punch. Just a drunk man's gesture of dominance. That's when Lucky stood up, slowly. No sudden movements, no anger on his face. Just calm, calculated precision. He reached across the table and took Poli's right hand. Poli was confused, drunk brain trying to process what was happening. Lucky pressed Poli's hand flat on the card table. The green felt. The blood would stain it later. "What are you?" Poli started to say. Lucky's left hand picked up the cigar cutter from the table. Heavy brass, sharp blades designed to slice through thick Cuban cigars cleanly. Poli's eyes went wide. Suddenly not drunk anymore. Suddenly very aware. "Lucky, wait. I didn't mean..." The cigar cutter came down. Snap. Poli's index finger separated from his hand. Clean cut, right at the base knuckle. For half a second there was no pain. Just shock. Poli stared at his hand, at the space where his finger used to be. Then the pain hit. He screamed, fell backward out of his chair, hit the floor. Blood was pumping from the wound. Bright red, pooling fast. The 8 casino workers didn't move, couldn't move. They just watched Lucky Luciano cut off Joe Masseria's nephew's finger. This wasn't a beating. This wasn't a warning. This was mutilation. This was the kind of act that started wars. Lucky bent down, picked up the severed finger from the table. Still warm, he wrapped it carefully in a white napkin, folded the corners, made it neat. Then he knelt beside Poli, who was writhing on the floor, still screaming, clutching his hand. Lucky opened Poli's jacket, slid the wrapped finger into the inside pocket. "When your uncle asks what happened," Lucky said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "tell him you disrespected me in my casino. Tell him you slapped me in front of my people. Tell him I gave you a choice. Apologize or lose a finger. You didn't apologize." Poli was sobbing now, not from pain, from understanding. His uncle would see the finger, his uncle would hear what happened, and his uncle would know his nephew had been stupid. Lucky stood up, looked at the 8 workers frozen around the room. "Someone, get him to a doctor. Tell the doctor it was an accident." Cigar cutter slipped. Nobody argued. 2 floor managers helped Poli to his feet, guided him toward the door. Blood dripped on the floor. Lucky walked to the bar, poured himself a whiskey and sat down. The casino went back to normal. Cards were dealt, roulette wheels spun, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. And by morning, Joe Masseria would know. October 19th, 1930, 9:30 a.m. Joe Masseria's social club in Little Italy. Lucky received the summons at 8. One word, "Come." He went. No bodyguards, no weapons. Just Lucky and his certainty that he'd done what needed to be done. Masseria was waiting in the back room. 62 years old. Grey hair, thick mustache. The face of a man who'd killed before and would kill again. On the table in front of him, wrapped in the same white napkin, was Poli's finger. Masseria didn't say anything when Lucky walked in, just pointed to the chair across from him. Lucky sat. Silence. 30 seconds. A minute. Finally, Masseria spoke. "My nephew." "Your nephew?" Lucky confirmed. "He came to my casino drunk, disrespected me in front of my people, so you cut off his finger." "Yes." More silence. Masseria picked up the napkin, unwrapped it slightly, looked at the finger, put it back down. "He's young, stupid." "He is," Lucky agreed. "But stupid or not, he's my blood. You understand what that means?" Lucky leaned forward slightly. "I understand. That's why he's alive. If he wasn't your blood, he wouldn't have left my casino breathing." Masseria's eyes narrowed. "You're telling me I should be grateful. I'm telling you I respected you by only taking a finger." The room was very quiet. Masseria's 2 bodyguards were standing by the door, hands near their waistbands. "Ready." Lucky didn't look at them, just kept his eyes on Masseria. Then something unexpected happened. Joe Masseria laughed, not a big laugh, a short, sharp bark of acknowledgement. "You got balls, Luciano. I'll give you that." "I got respect," Lucky corrected. "For you, not for drunk nephews who think bloodline is armor." Masseria nodded slowly. "My nephew told me what he said to you, about you being nothing without me. He said that. He was wrong. You're not nothing. You're smart, maybe too smart." Masseria pushed the napkin across the table toward Lucky. "Keep it, give it back to him when he's sober. Tell him his uncle says he's lucky. You only took one finger." Lucky didn't touch the napkin. He doesn't need the finger back. He needs to remember what happens when you disrespect the wrong man. Masseria studied Lucky for a long moment. Then he waved his hand. "Dismissal. Go. We're done here." Lucky stood, walked to the door, stopped. "Joe." Masseria looked up. "Your nephew won't cause problems again. But if he does, I won't stop at one finger." Masseria smiled, cold, predatory. "If he does, you have my permission to take the whole hand." Lucky left. The war that could have started never happened, because Joe Masseria understood something that his nephew didn't in this business. Respect isn't given. It's taken. And Lucky Luciano had taken it with a cigar cutter and a white napkin. Poorly Masseria recovered. His hand healed. He learned to function with 9 fingers, but he never forgot the night in Lucky's casino. Never forgot the sound the cigar cutter made. Never forgot the weight of his own severed finger in his jacket pocket. He left New York 6 months later, moved to Chicago, worked for Al Capone for a few years, then disappeared from the underworld entirely. Some say he became a baker. Some say he went back to Sicily. Nobody knows for sure. But in New York, in the casinos and social clubs and back rooms where gangsters gathered, the story spread. Lucky Luciano cut off Masseria's nephew's finger, did it in front of 8 witnesses, wrapped it in a napkin, and sent it back to Joe the boss. And Masseria didn't start a war, because Lucky was right. Respect is earned through action, not avoided through fear. The 8 casino workers who witnessed it never forgot. 2 of them would still be working for Lucky 10 years later, when he created the commission and became the most powerful organized crime figure in America. When people asked them what made Lucky different from other bosses, they'd tell the same story. The nephew, the finger, the napkin, and they'd end it the same way every time. Lucky didn't kill him. That would have been easy. He made him live with it, made him look at his hand every day, and remember, you don't disrespect Lucky Luciano, not in his house, not anywhere. The casino on Mulberry Street stayed open for another 6 years. The card table where it happened was never replaced. The bloodstain was scrubbed out, but everyone who worked there knew which table it was. And whenever new dealers or floor managers started working, the veterans would point to that table and tell them the story, not as a warning, as a lesson. This is how power works. This is how respect is maintained, not through fear of death, but through certainty of consequence. Lucky Luciano never spoke about that night publicly. When reporters asked him years later about his reputation for violence, he'd just shrug. "I did what needed to be done, no more, no less." But privately, to Maya Lansky, Lucky said something else, something that explained his entire philosophy. You kill a man, he's dead. His family mourns. Maybe they forget. But you leave a man alive with a reminder. He tells everyone. His shame becomes your legend. And legends don't need to pull triggers. People pull triggers for them. October 18th, 1930. A drunk nephew, a cigar cutter, 8 witnesses, 1 finger. And the moment Lucky Luciano proved that respect isn't negotiated, it's taken, and once taken, it's never forgotten. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications for future stories and let us know where you're watching from.